Hello, hello again. Welcome on our next meeting, Didactic Fridays. Today we are guesting Elena Atanasiu from the Gdansk University of Technology nowadays, fortunately. And today we are going to talk about the universal design for learning, of learning. So, Elena, I will help you with everything. If anyone would like to ask some additional questions, you can write them on the chat or raise your hand, and I will help you with anything if you need it. So, are we
The
ready?
floor is mine.
The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Bartek, for the invitation. We've been talking about this for a long time. And finally, we're here to talk about one of my favorite topics, so universal design for learning. It's a framework we're going to discuss today in the first part of this workshop. And then we're going to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence, so some tools and strategies for inclusive teaching. And I, as a real humanist, because my background is in humanities, foreign languages, literature, I like quotes. So when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. So this is just a quote I took because it reminds me of our classroom. We usually work with, we work with different students, and each student is a different flower, and this student needs to bloom in our classroom. So sometimes we need to fix the way we teach. We need to improve the way we teach. Maybe we can include some new tools, so some new strategies, and then we can offer our students an environment in which they can grow, right? So we don't remove the flowers, we kind of modify, we fix the environment. And of course, you know, it's just us, the teacher on one side and our students on the other side. And usually we are by ourselves. Of course, I'm not saying that we don't have a support from our university, our colleagues, but in our classroom, it's us and many of those different flowers. So what do we do, right? Someone is going to say, well, I'm by myself. Yes, I do have support, but still, imagine if you have 125 flowers and they're all different, what do you do? So universal design for learning, it's a framework that kind of try to answer that question and try to prepare a framework that can support our students, can support all these different flowers we have in our classroom, fix the environment if we need to fix it, and of course, help them grow, right? Because that's our ultimate goal. And so just to start with, I would like to ask a question. Have you ever experienced some kind of a difficulty in your life? It can be your personal, it can be your professional life. Of course, you can share as much as you want. You don't have to share, you know, things you don't want to share. But have you ever experienced a situation in which you felt, okay, I have all these competencies, you know, I can, but actually there is this barrier that stands on my way and I cannot thrive. You know, I have difficulties, with the things I would like to achieve. For example, we can think about barriers that are physical. We can think of a barrier that are mental. We can think about the barriers in different contexts. For example, we can say, okay, I was in a situation when I wanted to learn how to ski. I broke my leg, and then I had to do something. You know, I have to do some paperwork, and this office was in a building, and that building didn't have an elevator. I had no one there to help me. I was by myself. And what did I feel, right? I felt frustrated. I felt angry. I felt that this is not, you know, right. Or it can be something like, I don't know, you're reading something and, you know, you can read well, right? And you just have this paper PDF scan, and there is no way you can read what's inside of there, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, you know, if I would have the appropriate form of this document, you know, maybe I can achieve what the teacher or the other person is expecting of me, but I'm not going to achieve this because I cannot read this document. So please share in your chat, have you ever experienced any type of difficulties in your life? Because I think that we experience different situations and we encounter different barriers throughout our life in our personal and professional context. For sure, I've experienced few, and they, you know, the feeling that I cannot achieve something, not because, I don't have the competencies but because there is this thing standing on my way, it was very, frustrating for me at certain times. So I think that we can agree that we all experience this type of situation, and for sure the students we have in our classroom experience similar situations as well. So what is the Universal Design for Learning? As I said, it's a framework, and it was it was a term that's with us. It's a framework that is with us since 2008. And this framework was created by the Center for Applied Special Technology, or CAST, that created the Universal Design for Learning. And it's a framework so that all learning experiences in school, workplace, and life are thoughtfully designed to elevate strengths and eliminate barriers, because everyone, and I say this again, everyone deserves the opportunity to grow and thrive. So Universal Design for Learning was also a term that kind of wanted to confront the theory of the average brain. And actually, I really recommend this book that you see here on my slide. It's called The End of the Average. It's a very nice book written by Dr. Todd Rose. He works in the Department of Education at the Harvard University, and he actually is trying to put an end to this average brain, and he's trying to put the end of this average education. And so he's basing this Universal Design for Learning on the principles that we need to empower everyone to have agency over their own learning, and it can allow us as educators as well as the learners to set clear goals, to anticipate, and this is a very important question that he's trying to solve, so we can anticipate environmental barriers, create meaningful options, and fully embrace the fact that we're all different. Besides that, he has very few interesting videos and conferences on YouTube, so you can search for him if you have time. These videos are short, sometimes 5-7 minutes, and he kind of talks about this idea of the average brain, or why the average brain does not exist. And he's talking about this research from Dr. Michael Miller. He was a neuroscientist from Santa Barbara, and he was also trying to see if there is something that we can call the average brain. So do we have this model that we can call, okay, this is the average brain, and then we can compare all the brains to this average brain and say, okay, yes, we have so-and-so, this number of population that has this average brain. And he was actually doing this MRIs. They were doing MRIs of different subjects, of course, more than 3. This is just an example. And they were going through this MRI. They were doing some exercises that were related to the brain, some mental tasks. And then they kind of developed something that they called the model of the average brain. So this is how that turned out. But then he started thinking, okay, well, now I'm going to take each individual brain and I'm going to compare to this average brain, and I'm going to see if among all the subjects that I've tested, there is actually something that we can call the average brain. So he took these subjects back and he repeated the whole experiment. He scanned his brain, he did the same activities, and then he started putting one scan, the scan of the subject, on top of the scan of the average brain. And he came to the conclusion that neither of the brains that he was testing would fit into this prototype of the average brain. So he kind of came out with this, the outcome of this research was, the conclusion was that there is not such a thing as an average brain. We all think in a different way, and our brains function in a different way. So if we can say that there is not such a thing as an average brain, how come that we're teaching average brains in our classroom? And of course, we're all teachers. We are kind of connected with educations, and the good thing is that we are here and we're trying to search for ways, right, to add appropriate teaching methodologies into our classroom, to address diversity, different thoughts, different way of thinking. But and I don't know how it is in your universities and in your countries, but for sure I talk to many teachers and to many students from Poland and the United States. And I think that even though we are here and we're enthusiastic about changing things in education, for the most part, in many places, we're still teaching to this average brain that does not exist. So Dr. Todd Rose also inspired himself with the universal design for architecture. And this was also, I think that we've heard about it. It's the accessible design, inclusive design. And it was focusing on creating environments that can be used by everyone. So we can use it regardless our age, size, disability. So it was about designing buildings and spaces that are accessible and eliminating the need for costly reparations or adaptations. And I think that, especially in Poland, we've done a great job with this. Most of our buildings are accessible, or if they're not, we're thinking about ways, we're thinking about applying for different types of funds so we can make our buildings adaptable. So this universal design for learning actually has the origin of the universal design for learning. We can also find it in the universal design for architecture. And this is a term that was first introduced into the field of architecture by Ron Mace. So he was an architect and he was a person in wheelchair since the age of 2, and he got into architecture. He was interested in the topic, and because this was something that was also personal to him, he introduced this universal design for architecture. So how can we make spaces accessible? While Dr. Todd, he was thinking about, okay, so we have this available spaces, accessible spaces. So how can we take this, what we've learned from universal design from architecture, and we can actually think about designing educational spaces, right, that are universal for all learners. And so why UDL and why now? Because I think we can all agree we have the challenges of the diverse classrooms. And being diverse, it's not only about nationality, and it's not also about disability. Disability in Poland, we still use this word. I think that in the United States, from what I've seen, we're trying to kind of walk away from the term of disability because it brings a lot of negative connotations. And I see that we use instead of the same disability, we use different abilities. But being different, being diverse, it's more than that. For example, being diverse in terms of the universal design for learning are all people that are neurodiverse. Also mental health conditions, also language diversity, socioeconomic status, cultural background, and so on. Also, diversity in the classroom means, for example, students that don't have any prior educational background, at least parents don't have a prior educational background in higher education, for example, first-generation students, and also technology access and digital literacy. So just because students know how to use cell phones, they know how to use computers, maybe they know how to use some AI tools, doesn't mean that they have the digital literacy skills, right? And this UDL framework actually saying that once you step into your classroom, just think that your classroom is diverse, and just because you don't see something, you don't see some barriers, it doesn't mean that don't exist for other people. So UDL, as I said, it started in 2008. We have an evolution. I mean, it's been here with us for a while. And also we're adding, in the beginning it was about, disabilities back in the day, maybe being binational, bilingual, and so on. But now we're adding different layers to it. So neurodiversity, I think it's a hot topic. We talk about it a lot. Mental health conditions, which we also talk about it a lot, especially in terms of our students, also in terms of our teachers. Language diversity, right? We have different languages in our classroom, especially here in Poland, for example. Now we have learners. I mean, we're international, and we often meet students. We have students in our classroom for which Polish is not their first language, right? right? We also have the socioeconomic status and cultural background. So these are all the diversities we are facing in our classrooms. And so why UDL and why now? Because without intentional design, if we don't think about diversity, if we don't think about universal design for learning, this diversity often translates into barriers, and these barriers can be invisible for others. For example, I'm a neurodiverse person. I have difficulties with, I have attention deficit disorder, right? So for example, for me, I encounter barriers each day, which for other person that doesn't have ADHD, these barriers don't exist. They're invisible. But does that mean that someone should not take this in consideration? No, of course not. I think that just because something is not a barrier for us doesn't mean that we shouldn't be taking that in consideration and that we shouldn't be thinking about it actively, right? Some of the key challenges that we're facing in education, and this is just few of them. Of course, we have more than this, and different research shows different challenges. But first of all, we still have one-size-fits-all instruction. And I'm not talking about us. Of course, we're amazing. We're here. We're trying to, learn new things. But for the most part, we have that one-size-fits-all instruction still in many educational environments, pre-K, K-12, high school, college, and so on. And that means that we're treating all of our students the same way. So if we teach one-size-fits-all instruction, which is very common, at least as I said, in the environments that I'm familiar with, that means that we're thinking about our students as a non-diverse group. We're thinking that they're all the same and they all like to sit still, take notes, and listen to our lectures. And this can bring disadvantages for students that have different kind of challenges. For example, students that have difficulties with executive function challenges, language processing delays, or different cognitive styles. Of course, there is something that we call the hidden curriculum. So I talked to many different professors and instructors and students, and some things that are obvious to us as teachers or might be obvious to other people might not be that obvious for others. For example, I'm talking here about students, first-generation students, for example, students that don't have support in their family, students that come from families in which they're the first person to actually come to the university. We talk about low-income students. We talk about international students that deal, I don't know, with a different cultural background, with different language barriers, and sometimes things that are obvious to us about how things should be done in the classroom might not be obvious to them. So that means that these students, I don't know, we can call them this on that. No, of course, they can have their challenges, and it's our job to kind of predict what can happen and to kind of remove those barriers. For example, I had a conversation with this professor, and she was very upset that, I don't know, students would write to her mails on the weekends. And then if she didn't answer the mail, then they would send another mail. And then she said, okay, what should I do? They're writing to me on the weekends, and on the weekends I would like to have my time off. And I said, yeah, that's very valid. But have you ever talk about it? Do you have this information in your syllabus, right? Because if you want students to understand what you're trying to say, or, I mean, they're not going to read your mind. It has to be somewhere in the syllabus. So I told her, maybe you should change some things up. For example, you can write in your syllabus that you only answer emails Monday to Friday. Or you can write in your syllabus that you will provide them with feedback within, I don't know, 48 hours. Do you have something like that in your syllabus? Well, I don't. And I said, well, I mean, no wonder students write to you, right? Because they cannot read this hidden curriculum, these hidden rules. And she said, okay, well, but actually, I don't know if I want to have that type of policy in my syllabus. And I said, well, if you don't want to have that type of policy in your syllabus, then you can expect that students will write to you at any time. So as I said, just because I don't want to receive emails during the weekend doesn't mean that the student is going to know if it's not written, spelled out in the syllabus. So just those information, those norms, right? College norms, of course, every teacher has different norms, every university has a different norms. They have to be spelled out, they have to be written, they have to be set. Also, this assessment bias, so we're doing in terms of artificial intelligence, everything is changing, assessment is changing, and we're still kind of going to that standardized traditional assessment. That I think it does not really necessarily measure mastery. They measure how fast you can recall something under pressure. So if we have an exam, I don't know, for 2 hours, and it's going to end up with a grade, right? We're putting a pressure and we're actually saying, okay, you work very well under pressure because you were able to do this exam, I don't know, in less than 30 minutes, right? But maybe someone that has difficulties or someone that needs more time, right, would perform better if he had more time. So we also have to be aware that assessment, it's not necessarily the right way to reflect actual learning. And there we know are some students that feel a lot of pressure and they don't perform that well under pressure. So we have to have that in consideration. Just because I'm going to resolve the exam in 30 minutes because I'm an expert doesn't mean that every student in my classroom will do the same thing. So when we plan assessment and the way we assess our students, we should also take in consideration those things and something that we call the assessment bias. Also, overwhelm, cognitive load. Students nowadays, this is what I'm observing here in Poland, because it was kind of normal for me that American students work and go to college, but I see that this is happening in Poland more often, right? Students work, students juggle a lot of responsibilities. They struggle, right, with burnout, with fragmented attention. I think we also struggle with the same things. I mean, life is busy, life is fast, right? And that can actually bring a lot of anxiety, a lot of pressure. And if we overwhelm them with text-heavy information, dense information, it can also be too much for them to handle. Does that mean that we shouldn't be teaching? No, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be teaching heavy information, heavy material. That just means that maybe we can look for some strategies that can make that process a little bit easier. And also this digital literacy, technology, skills, we tend to think that everyone, just because we click on the computer, just because we use the mobile phone, just because we're open to test ChatGPT and other technological tools, that we're skillful, that our students are skillful, but actually we can see that there might be a big gap in those technology skills, and we also have to be aware of that. I mean, I know that it might be different here in Europe or in different countries or in different universities. I was working with students. In my classroom, I had a student that was 14 years old, because we have a program in which you have high school credits and university credits in one. So I would have a student that's 14 years old, and also I had a student that was a psychology major, a veteran, and he was 65 years old. So in my classroom, I would have students from 14 to 65. And for example, that student that was 14 was very skillful, technologically skillful, but this person that was older, that veteran, he had difficulties, and maybe I wanted to, you know, have a classroom which was very digital and I had a lot of technology, but then, you know, he wasn't able to keep up. So what did I do? I actually paired him up with a student that, you know, with a student that was also helping him with his digital skills, and of course I was supporting him, and it was a great experience for him. And if I would, you know, if I wouldn't do that, maybe, I'm not saying that he won't be successful in my class, but I think that he would struggle more. So if we notice these disparities, it's also our job to kind of see, okay, what can I do? Maybe I can support, maybe I can pair him up with a peer that can support him. So just be aware that just because we live, you know, in a technological world doesn't mean that everyone is going to have the same skills and same competencies. So I think that the key challenges are also those that we live in times that we like to have, we have our preferences. And even though research shows that, I don't know, we engage with material in a similar way. So for example, if I like to listen to podcasts instead of reading heavy text, most likely that's how my pattern is going to be. But if I would only have that pattern, I'm not sure how I would feel about it, right? So just think about it, that it's very nice to have a choice. It's very nice to have a voice. It's very nice to have relevance. And if I don't have all those things, that engagement will drop. So if I'm in a class as a student and my teacher says, hey, okay, so you can read this as a book, or maybe, you know, you can listen to this as a podcast, or maybe, I don't know, you can go through this mind map. I would have a choice. I can choose, right? I will engage with the materials because I see something that suits my preferences. And today, I think with the artificial intelligence, we have a chance to diversify the way we present material. We have ways to diversify the way we consume content, right? Because we all have different preferences. And so the UDL, Universal Design for Learning, it has 3 core principles. Actually answers 3 main key questions: the why of learning, the what of learning, and the how of learning. So if you go to their website, CAST, and I will show it to you in a second, you will find this nice table in which you have, you know, the UDL framework, but it's basically these 3 main elements. So why am I learning? Why am I learning? How will I engage, right? How will I engage with the material? How will my students actually, from the perspective of the teacher, engage with my material? If I give them only one type of material, will they engage? Well, maybe some of them will, but some of them won't, right? As I said, if you only give me text, okay, maybe I'll read it and I will try to do my best. Probably I will be overwhelmed. Probably at some point I will say, okay, I'm not going to read this 300 pages. But maybe if you give me different ways to engage with this material, maybe I would be more open to actually engage. And then my motivation is going to go up, and then I'm going to actually be more motivated and enthusiastic about discovering new things in your class. The what of learning, so the way we represent information, as I said, today we have different ways of presenting information. We can do it by PowerPoint, we can do, you know, as an audio, video, we have different tools that can support, and we can actually present the same information in a different way. Or we can tell students, hey, okay, I'm teaching with this PowerPoint, or I'm teaching with this book, but let me show you a very interesting tool, AI tool, that can help you, right, consume this information in a different way. So if you don't like pictures, maybe you can listen to the same information in the form of a podcast. Or maybe if this is too overwhelming for you, too much text, too dense, maybe I can give you a tool which can help you break down that into a few main points. Maybe I can give you a tool in which you can, I don't know, create your own Q&A document, right? You can interact. And then we have the multiple means of action and expression. That means that sometimes we have activities that we give to our students, and we say, okay, you have to write this paper. This paper has to have 10 pages, has to be in a Word document. You have to finish this assignment by May 30th, I think, and you have to submit this assignment via Moodle. And then, okay, yes, for some students, that would be a very interesting way to show that they've learned something in your class, but probably for most of the students, it won't be, because they would like to present their knowledge to you in a different way, because they're awesome in doing infographics, right? But you don't give them the chance to show you what they learned. So you're assessing the students based on one form, and you're expecting everyone to have great results. Of course they won't, but does that mean that they're lazy or other things that sometimes, you know, I hear people talking about students? No, that means that maybe you should rethink the way you expect them to present knowledge to you. So Universal Design for Learning, these guidelines have, if you look at these guidelines, they're organized both vertically and horizontally. The vertical organization would be means of engagement, representation, action, and expression. And these are like the 3 main guidelines. And as I said, as you can see, it's written actually on the website that this is UDL was also designed to give the learner agency, right? To say, hey, this is yours, right? You learn, this is your process, you take responsibility for it. Your learning is going to be purposeful, reflective, authentic, strategic, action-oriented, and I'm here to help you. I'm here to create that environment for you. Also, if you look at in a vertical way, we're going to have options for access, so accessibility, and we're going to design in such a way to welcome all interests and all identities, because students that come to our classroom, they have different interests and they have different identities, and identity goes, as I said, a little bit deeper than, I don't know, being from a different country and so on, right? That identity, the things that we identify, okay, I'm this and this and this and this, it's very different for everyone, right? And sometimes we're on some intersections. Also perception and interaction. So how we perceive things and how we interact, right? The accessibility element of the UDL. And then we have support. So how can we actually design so we can support the effort, we can support persistence? How can we design so we can support students with language and symbols? Because depends, right, what you teach, something that looks very simple to us because we're this great expert in mathematics, physics, chemistry, and so on, doesn't mean that your students is there yet, right? Because we teach different courses. And sometimes, for example, we would be teaching first year college course. We're the expert, and we think that the student, his first class at the university, and I don't know, we just show them this symbols and this dense academic language that, he's going to have the capacity to understand everything. So UDL also says, okay, well, maybe you can present this dense material in a way that's simple for them. You can introduce them slowly, right? Not overwhelm them. Or maybe there will be students that will understand what you have to say and others that you will have to support, so know what you can do. And also expression and communication. And the last one is this part of the framework in which we support executive functions. So here we have emotional capacity, building knowledge and strategy development. And this is especially for, as I said, students that struggle with these executive functions, because executive functions in people, for example, with ADHD, they like to go on vacation very often. And so you have to, you have a deadline, you have to do something, and suddenly they've disappeared. So what do we do with that? There's also a strategy how to engage and involve the students. These guidelines are actually universal. Why? Because they were developed to support everyone. So they're not just for higher education, they're for all across education. So starting across all learning contexts. So early education teachers can apply universal design for learning into their teaching, primary and secondary schools as well, post-secondary and higher education, after-school programs, workforce training, and adult education. So everything that has to do with the education, because we are a lifelong learners. And if we do, I would love to see a world in which we would apply these guidelines on each stage of our educations, and we can support our learners from day one, right? And we can say, okay, I see you, and it's fine that you're different, and it's fine that you engage with the material in a different way, and I'm here to support you. And they would be ideal, right? So if you open these guidelines and you see some strategies or some guidelines that you say, okay, maybe this doesn't fit my class, because they have even a part for play and games and things like that. And I know that some people like gamification and they use it in their classroom, but I don't know, you might see something that you will think, okay, maybe this is not really higher education. Then just know that this is universal, so it goes across all learning contexts. So it's here to support all educators, education as a whole. And these guidelines are not a prescription or a checklist. This is not something that, you're going to take and you're going to say, okay, I have this checklist here. Let me see what I have, and I'll go one by one. It's not that. This is just a tool. This is just a methodology that can help teachers reduce barriers and maximize learning opportunities. So just that idea, okay, you all have different competencies and you can all strive in my classroom. And just because you're different doesn't mean that you cannot succeed. And then also, in a way, if we apply this framework into our work, we're honoring diversity, diverse identities, diverse needs. And we're saying, okay, this classroom is for you, right? And of course, you can have many different flowers, many different cases. And I don't know, in different countries, this is a little bit different. In some countries, the topic of neurodiversity or being different might be a bigger taboo than in others. So sometimes teachers say, okay, but how do I know? How do I know that this person, I don't know, is A, B, C, D? And I say, you don't have to know, because nowadays, at least in Poland, when you build a building, you're not actually looking at the statistics and say, okay, well, let me see, I don't know, maybe one person will come that will need this, I don't know, elevator. So maybe I shouldn't build a building with an elevator. You don't think like that. You build an elevator inside of the building because you know that everyone can use this elevator, not just a person that sits on a wheelchair. The same way when we design for education, we don't think, okay, well, maybe I won't have a person like that, or I don't know. No, you're gonna say, okay, I'm gonna use this framework and I'm gonna just apply it to my teaching, to my learning, and the benefits will be not just for the people that need that, the benefits will be for everyone in our classroom. So UDL, it's something that I always say you have to feel it in your heart. This is a philosophy of education. This is the necessity of seeing your students succeed, right? And this is something that you have to feel. If you don't feel it, like, most likely it's going to be very difficult for you to apply it into your classroom. And I know teachers like that, you know, that maybe they don't see the necessity of doing that. That's fine. So that's why I say it's something that you feel in your heart. It's a philosophy of doing education. That's how I see it. And UDL is just, for me, good teaching. Because that means I acknowledge that you're all different, and that doesn't mean that you cannot be successful in my class. For example, I was teaching, because I was in the US, I was a Spanish professor. I was teaching literature, culture, and so on. And I was in a very difficult position because I was teaching a subject that most of the students hated. Because foreign languages are not very popular in the US. Spanish maybe a little bit more, just because of the geographical situation. So we have more Spanish speakers. And so most of the students that were coming to my class were there because they needed to fulfill a prerequisite. So the first 2 years in the United States, you take different subjects, sociology, philosophy, I don't know, languages, and so on and so on. And then you continue to your major. And so I knew that coming inside of my classroom, the only person passionate about Spanish was me, right? I loved my subject, I loved Spanish, I loved literature, and I love all this, but I know that I'm working with a group that, well, it's not really passionate. They don't want to be there. So what would I do? You know, I would show openness and I would talk about it openly. And I would say, listen, Spanish doesn't have to be your favorite subject, but I hope we're going to have a good time, right? We're going to have a good time. We're going to have fun. And I'm going to make sure that you have the environment in which you can all succeed. And I would also tell them all these jokes about me and going to school and taking classes like biology, chemistry, physics, and so on. And I said, you know, I also didn't have good grades, but does that then mean, because some students will say, oh, I think I'm not intelligent. I don't think I'm intelligent because I cannot speak Spanish. This is difficult for me. And I said, well, what should I say about myself? You know, bad grades in biology, bad grades in math. I barely passed the math exam. That doesn't mean that I'm not intelligent. This is just not, you know, this was just not my subject. But, you know, and I understand that Spanish, you know, maybe it's not your favorite subject. Maybe you feel you have doubts, but don't worry, we're going to have fun. And I'm going to do my best that you achieve the most you can. And for sure, at the end of the year, you know, I had a good teaching evaluation, and many students would say this was not my favorite class in terms of Spanish, but this was my favorite teacher and I had a great time. But because I was always open to work with diversity of students and support them and help them. And, it's not that I learned the universal design for learning in one day and I said, okay, now I'm going to apply everything. No, sometimes I did not have an answer, but I would say, hey, okay, I don't have the answer, but I will search for an answer. I will search for solution. And I think that UDL is searching for solutions, right, to support our students. So you can actually take this guideline, you can mix and match, you can use them depending on the context, and you can help, you can talk about it openly in your class. You can say, hey, just present that openness. If you have any difficulties, if you have any struggles with the material, please talk to me. And by saying that, and maybe saying, a joke or two about your experience as a student, I think you're opening yourself up for a dialogue, for a discussion, and you're modeling, right? An openness for students to come and talk to you, because we do have a problem talking about, I'm working in Poland and I talk to people and we are still not that open to say, hey, I'm different, I'm neurodiverse. Of course this is changing, but if we as adults are not open to talk about it, then how can we expect the students that come to our classroom are going to be open about about their difficulties and their struggles? So I promote always an open dialogue, right? And of course, this is not to say that you have to share something you don't like to. You can share, a situation. You can talk about, a situation that you find yourself in, and so on. But you can kind of model that openness, that open dialogue. This is how the UDL works. This is how it looks. And actually, if you go to their website, which I'm going to also give it to you, you can click on each there. So for example, you have a problem because, I don't know, you want to kind of represent diversity of perspectives and identities in authentic ways, and you don't know how to do it. So you can use this framework and you can just click right on the topic that's of your interest, and it actually gives you an explanation, like a methodology explanation about what can you do in this case, right? For example, you want to optimize access to accessible materials and you don't know really how to do it. By clicking here, it gives you an explanation. Okay, this is the way you can do it, right? And this takes a lot of practice and training and conversations, but here you kind of have a framework that can help you resolve some of the most common things we deal with in a diverse classroom. And as I said, in 2008, we started with one UDL framework, and now this has been evolving, and they're very actually open to collaborate with you, with everyone, with educators, and to get feedback, to talk about the struggles students have in the classroom, to talk about this framework, and to kind of open up to other things. So we have here as well, as I said, information. For example, I don't know, you have students that, as I said, they like multiple, they would like to engage with you, with your material in a different way. You can always click and you can see how you can do that, how you can promote that. And so just a simple assignment, and I'm not saying that this is what you do, but I've seen this in many, working for the past 16 years with different teachers in the classroom. For example, we give, this is very simple, as I said, instructions. Okay, write a 10-page research paper on a topic related to climate policy, and then submit in this form via Moodle, as I said. And now I think, okay, well, now I've taken this workshop and I want to redesign and I want to be more open and I want to be more inclusive. So what do I do? Right? For example, you can write this in a different way. So you can say, hey, you can take still and write this research paper on climate policy, but maybe you can connect it to the field of your interest, right? So when a student can connect, and of course you're experts in your subjects. I'm from the humanities. You're probably more into science, STEM, and so on. And so, but each of you knows what you do in your classroom. You're experts. But I think that no matter what we teach, and I think Bartek is doing some great work as well. take something that you teach and you say, okay, so now let's connect this to the real world. Let's connect this to your field of interest. And I think that gives another level of interest because now, okay, I can write about this, but I can also connect to something that I'm interested in. I'm going to give you an example from my teaching practice. And of course, this is Spanish culture, literature, and so on. But I think I can share this with you. Students had to do some work on each country because I was specializing in Latin American cultures and literatures, and so we would go and study different countries, right? The culture aspect, social, and so on. And they had to write a paper on Argentina, and so I would say, okay, well, you have to write a paper on Argentina, but then you can choose a topic related to your major, minor, or to your hobby, right? So show me something about Argentina, but something that interests you. For example, students that were majoring in nursing, they would talk about the healthcare system in Argentina. They would write a paper or so on. Students that were interested in security, national security or whatever, they would write a paper, I don't know, how does the police system works in Argentina, or how does the military work in Argentina. Students that were interesting and were majoring, I don't know, in cooking, they wanted to be chefs, they will explore something related to their field. So that gave meaning to that assignment. It wasn't just, okay, write a paper, you all write the same thing, but I was connecting to their field of interest, and that really gave them a lot of motivation, right? They were able to explore a topic in depth. And then I said, okay, if you want to write a research paper or you want to write a paper, then you have the chance to write a paper, and I'm going to accept that, right? And there are students that feel that they would like to write a paper. But then I had students that were very creative because they were majoring in art, or they were graphic designers, or they were majoring in theater. And I said, okay, well, now you have the chance to create a podcast episode, or you can maybe create a short video, right? And then if you create a short video or a podcast, then maybe you can add a transcript. So when you present to your peers, they can also have a transcript, because some people need that. And then also, as I said, I had students that would like to do this and design an infographic because they were majoring in graphic design. And I also gave them that opportunity. Of course, they had to also explain. I mean, they would have the infographic, but they also had to explain a little bit, write few pages and explain in depth, because I wanted to see that they did their research. And of course, I also use a rubric. And I know some people will say, okay, well, how do I don't know, one rubric, 3 different types of assignments. How do I do that? That's a topic for another meeting, but it's doable. And of course, it requires a little bit of work and practice, but I think, we can do it. It's not that we can't, right? And then I said, okay, submit your final product via, I used Canvas back then, Moodle here, but you can decide if you want to submit, how they can submit the assignment. In this case, I always say, okay, everything has to be in one place. And then students at the end, for example, of the class or the module or whatever, they could present what they've done to their peers. So if you had a paper, you would say a few words. If you had a podcast, so they were able to present their work. And this was very personal to them, right? Because, oh, I'm talking about something that I'm passionate about, something that I've researched, and we could hear and learn different things. And even as a teacher, I told them, hey, I'm learning so much from you, because yes, I'm an expert in 19th century Argentine literature, but wow, listen, you I don't know, talk about, I don't know, the healthcare system, right? Something maybe that I wasn't passionate about, and I've learned so much from you. So I was also telling my students that I learned from them, that this is not just a one way. It's not that they just learn from me. I also learn from them, and I think that they really appreciated that as well. So to see how that connects, right, I put here the numbers. Doesn't mean anything for you. Later, when you look at the rubric, you kind of know. But it was actually, what did I do? I provided them, or I personalized the topic. So I engage them, right? The motivation goes up. I'm writing about something or I'm doing a work about something that interests me. I give them a choice of format. They were all different. So everyone can show me, okay, I know, I'm ready, I've researched, but they can show it in a different way, not one way. Then I use the rubric, and I think most of us do that these days. But I use the rubric. I always give them the rubric before the assignment so they know, okay, this is what is expected of me. There are clear expectations. There is no ambiguity. I know what I'm supposed to do. This is clear. When I was going to school back in the days, long time ago, I didn't have any rubric. I would receive because my first degree was here in Poland. Later on, I was studying in the United States, but in Poland, I didn't know what a rubric is. It was like, okay, you received a 3. And I was like, okay, I don't know. Yes, thank you. Goodbye. But I didn't have, the explanation why, right? I didn't have any criteria. So I think that if I have a rubric for me and for many other, for all of us, I think it's like, okay, I know what the expectations are. I can prepare or not. And if I don't prepare, then I know what the consequences are, then maybe I'm going to have a few points later. If someone does grading, of course, this is, again, another topic. And then accessibility, also very important part, that if we design materials, especially if they're audio or they're video, provide also text-based information, right? Because we have students that will need that. So maybe you can write on the chat, do you think that this is realistic, something to try in your course to kind of turn things around and make, I don't know, instructions or assignments more inclusive? I know it will require some work in the beginning, right? Because now I have to rethink my rubric if I have it, and I have to do things, but write which change would be a realistic thing to do. As I said, this is how that looks. And if you open up, as I said, if you click on any of these, then you will have this information, right? So they say, as you see, so what can you do in case of, okay, so embed choices that align, such as, so they kind of give you information what you should do if you want to optimize choice and autonomy. So for example, you want to give choice to your students, you want to make them, you want to increase their autonomy of learning, I'm sorry. So how can you do this? And of course, this is, a longer explanation about how can you actually achieve that, and how can you increase engagement. Okay, so now I would like to do an activity, maybe. First to kind of get into the topic of universal design for learning. Maybe if you have questions, I'm going to look at the questions right now on the chat because I didn't have a chance. But I don't know, maybe we can also choose how we work, because maybe we can go into groups. And Bartek is gonna send you the document, the Word document with the assignments. And you're gonna find in that document different learner profiles. And these learner profiles are for people that struggle with different things. And this is not to stereotype anyone. So this is just to kind of see from the perspective of another person. And then in that same document, in this first activity, you're gonna have a lesson. And this lesson is like a very dense, heavy philosophical text. So you're gonna see actually, because sometimes things that are easy for us are very difficult for other people. So we'll see how we work with that text. And in your group, I don't know how many people we have, but maybe we can work 2 or 1. But like, I don't know, 10 people. Okay, maybe groups of 2, yeah. Or groups of 3 or groups of 4, however you feel comfortable. So I would like you to choose a profile. So each person that's in the group will choose a different profile. For example, you can be Elena that has ADHD and attention deficit disorder. You can use a person that has some kind of different struggles. They're all students, in a way, learners. You're gonna open that mock lesson, and then you're gonna look at it and you're gonna say, okay, I don't know, I'm Elena, I choose this learner, and I think that reading this lesson, this learner can have the following difficulties. And you will kind of discuss how can you improve, what would you do, what would you like the teacher to do if you were in a situation that you have a text like that and that was your only option. So you just got this text, you have to do something with it, you don't understand, what would you do and what would you expect the teacher to do? So we're gonna first walk in the shoes of the learner, and then we're gonna walk in the shoes of the teacher. And then we can maybe, I don't know, 5 minutes? No, 10 minutes? Bartek, what do you think?
Okay, I'm just looking at those activities. I just pasted one of those activities on the chat, and I'm not sure if 5 minutes is enough to...
Okay, 10, 15, 10, okay.
Maybe. Okay. Do you want me to put all of the activities right away or just the first one?
As you want. You can send it to them, or you can, I mean, this is just to kind of see, okay, if I was this person, how would I feel in a situation that I had to confront this activity that my teacher gave me? So maybe we can go from there. I mean, we will give them all the activities at the end, whatever, because I know everyone can have a different preference. Some people like to see all the activities, some person one at a time. So you can do both. You can send a Word document, you can copy paste.
Okay. So just copy.
And we can just kind of go and see what barriers would the learner have if they encounter a text like that, what support we can give, what would have helped, what not. And then we're going to go and do similar things, but using artificial intelligence. But you can also use artificial intelligence and tools that you know to kind of also work with that information.
Okay. Would you like me to make rules for people to work with this task?
You can, I mean, I think that maybe groups of 2, I don't know how, because I'd also want to impose, I know that you've worked in different groups together, but I also know that everyone has a different preference. So groups of 2, if they feel comfortable,
okay,
it would be okay. And I can...
As far as I know, if we will make those groups here, those won't be recorded. That's not a problem for us. Just to let you know that if we will work within groups, then those groups won't be recorded. This is impossible.
Okay.
But you also mentioned about the question. I noted some of the question, and I would like to ask at least one of those at this moment. So you mentioned about the fact that if someone is capable of using a phone, it doesn't mean they are digitally. They do have digital literacy skills. So what does it mean that someone has those skills?
Well, I think that this is like a common problem, and I think we've talked about it in all our trainings related to artificial intelligence, because first we were training on digital technology, now we train on AI. And because research shows and different reports show that 80% of our students are using AI, does that really mean that, they have this digital literacy, right? Are they actually have the skills to engage? And I think that I read this book, which also kind of made me think about it. We give a phone, we give access, but does that mean that people really know how to use it? And I think most of us, our students, if we don't talk about it, right? So let's say we have students in our classroom, we're kind of not talking about digital technology, we don't talk about AI, and we just say, okay, whatever happens, happens. So yes, the student is going to use ChatGPT. Yes, the student is going to use a tool on their own because we don't teach them. We're kind of avoidant. We don't talk about it. But are they going to use the proper way? And, we talk a lot about ethics. We talk about using, AI and digital technology in the ethic way. So just because I know how to click, just because I know that ChatGPT exists, that then means that I really know how to use it in an ethical way, in the right way. So I think that that's something that I've heard also a lot of people talk about it, that we can assume that if someone clicks on ChatGPT or clicks on Google, that, oh, he knows how to do it. Well, he knows what he's doing. Well, no, because digital literacy is also about hygiene. It's also about critical thinking. It's also about, okay, how do I know, how to choose from this information? How can I compare? How can I use logic? How can I use critical thinking? And I think that we have a lot of disparities in this context, because yes, we have teachers like you, me, others that will talk about, artificial intelligence, digital tools, and they will say, okay, use it, but this is just a tool. Remember, A, B, C, D, right? Don't give up. Don't give all your critical thinking to AI. But there are teachers maybe, or people that won't talk about it, but they will assume, okay, they know how to use it. And then we receive a paper that's, we see that there is no critical thinking, but there is just the work of, of the tools. So I think we should make a difference.
That reminds me about something. You mentioned that this is quite common situation when people, when teachers assume that this is quite simple because for them this is simple. I'm just buying time for others to get familiarized with the activity that I gave them. So, and I remember quite often when I'm talking with my students, I'm telling them, hey guys, I understand that you do not understand the things that I'm saying because I'm already a PhD. Probably I know a bit more about chemistry than you do. So this is quite common. It's important to remember that.
And I think we forget.
Often.
And that's why I believe in continuous education. I believe that we are lifelong learners. And I also, actually, I was doing this when I was in the US. I would take, for example, Portuguese classes at the university, and I would be in the role of the student. Even though I was a professor already, but I wanted to learn Portuguese. I was passionate about it, and I signed up for college classes. And then, I was like, okay, I had the experience of being a professor of teaching, but now I was sitting on the other side, and I would observe maybe more critically because I already had the experience, and I would say, okay, well, here, this and that, or, okay, this can help my teaching. Oh, I like that. I don't like that, because I never wanted to forget what it meant to be a student. I wanted to be challenged, and I wanted to never forget, because I think that when we become experts, and sometimes, we become experts and we forget how it was in the beginning, when we didn't know how to speak Spanish, in my case, when we didn't. Actually, in college, I was a very bad Spanish student, and then I had a PhD. I ended up having a PhD. But, when I reflect on that road, I would say I'd never want to forget that once upon a time, I was also a learner. And I am many times, right? So I think that's what you do. It's a great example. And as I said, some of you already do a lot of these things, but maybe we needed a framework to say, okay, this is a framework, and maybe I can, apply more things. But I think what you do is amazing, just that openness. Or I say to my students, and I said in one conference, sometimes we think that our subject is the most important because it matters to us, right? But maybe if I come to a class, maybe I don't know, I'm chemistry major and I have to go through your class. Maybe it's not going to be my favorite class, but I have to go through it, right? But I can have fun. I can have fun in your class. I can have the great experience. Maybe I'm not going to have an A, because that's not, not everyone can have that A, but maybe I can have a good C. But I'm going to have a great time because you're open and because you understand that I don't have to have an A, right? So I think that what you do is a great example of being open.
Yeah, and such situations often show that some students just doesn't like our subjects, and in some cases, the citation that you gave at the beginning, do not fix the flowers, just fix the soil, fix the environment.
Yes.
So it also reminded me about the thing that I'm always reminding myself. According to newest publication, there is no such thing as teaching. There is only learning. So what is our job as teachers? To prepare the environment for those students. That's the important thing.
Yeah, because because I was, as I said, I'm multilingual and I've lived in different countries, so in Macedonia, in Poland, in Spain, in Latin America, in the US, in different states. And I've been in so many different contexts. And yes, when I came to the United States and I was a student there, I was like, wow, the teacher actually wants to know what I have to say, right? Because I came from a culture, and I say I was a student 20 something years ago, that no one cared what I had to say. Like, I was a student, right? And here suddenly I'm in a different context where they're encouraging me and they want to hear what I have to say. Or so difference. So I kind of came to the conclusion. Actually, there was I have very good memories about my time, when I was studying there, because I felt that even though I was very different, I came from a different country, different background, different, English as a second, not second, but third language or so. Even though I was struggling with many of these things, I felt that I was welcome in the classroom, and that, I can actually, I'm seen and I'm heard. And I guess that's something that we all our students want to. And also I learned there that as a teacher, as you said, teaching and learning, that if you prepare the environment, you give more autonomy to the students and you say, I'm here to help you go through this process, but you are actually responsible for your own learning. And if they feel motivated and engaged, I think that, the results will be amazing.
There was a question on the chat. How
Yes.
many languages do you speak, Elena?
Oh, phew.
But few or a few?
Well, I speak Macedonian, Polish, English, and Spanish. And then I speak other languages, but I won't say, so I'm not like advanced. Just somewhere like how to say, intermediate, like maybe Portuguese and all the Slavic languages from the Balkan region. So like Bulgarian, Serbian, Croatian, I all understand them and have some speaking skills. But that's my talent. And I told my students, hey, my talent are foreign languages, but ask me about physics, mathematics, chemistry. Oh my God, I don't remember anything. I was just, but I think that if I had the right environment, that maybe I would, yeah, be a better student. Like, not a better student in terms of grades, but better student in terms that I would actually remember something from my classes, right? So I would always say, hey, the only thing I know is how to speak Spanish, right? So don't worry, you're great in, because I had different majors. And I said, but listen, but you're majoring in biology. You're awesome, right? I don't know anything about biology. And so I would also take off that stress that students often have, especially in the language classroom, right? So what do you think about the text I provided you with? I think it's very, very dense.
Yes,
And
I'm just trying to keep up with it during the speech. What do you think about not making those small groups? If anyone would like to say something, I think
yes,
we can have the open space now.
Yes, if someone can, so you can ask a question, but the text, just to kind of say, I asked ChatGPT, hey, please give me a text, philosophical, very dense, very difficult, and maybe a text that doesn't make any sense. Because as I said, and what you mentioned, sometimes when they come to our classroom, this is what they see. You're talking about chemistry because you love it and you understand it, and what they see is the text that I provided you with, right? A bunch of information that doesn't make any sense for them, right?
I just realized that when you sent that to me and I saw that just before the workshop, I was like, oh my God, that's difficult. And now I understand what you meant. That's really dense. That's really difficult.
Yes.
And my first thought regarding how to make it easier, how to make it accessible for the students is to just ask what they understand from it. And I would use something which is called knowledge anchoring. So I'm using the things that they already know and then trying to attach the new knowledge with it. So I'm always doing that when I'm trying to explain some moderately difficult things like, I don't know, ion mobility in chemistry. It's not a trivial concept, as a matter of fact. But when we are talking about those things, I'm just talking about the things that I do understand, because this is very difficult for me.
Yeah, for me as well.
Yeah, I'm always telling the student to act like those ions, for example. While cations and anions are generally interacting with each other, they are there is a force which is trying to connect them, but they are not touching, as a matter of fact. While if you have some solvents around it, some other molecules, they will prevent those from the mobility. And when I'm trying to explain that to the students, I'm always like, okay, now you're a cation, you're an anion, and all the classes just rise up, stand up, come to me at the center of the class, and just stay here and try to touch each other. Only cation will try to touch the anion. And it appears this is very difficult if the class is more than 30 persons. And they are like, okay, so that's why ion mobility is not a trivial concept. This is just a regular knowledge anchoring. But I realized last time when I had those classes with my students that after that, I'm always asking them how they felt. Do they now understand what I'm talking about? Because this is difficult. And they are generally like, yeah, that was cool. Now I understand what is happening, more or less. But few of those students told me that that was very difficult for them because they are quite introverted. And they didn't enjoy the fact that they have to stand up and interact with other people. And I was like, oh, you're totally right. I should ask you before, do you feel okay with that? So probably knowledge anchoring might be okay, but I have to always, in every single case, ask the students, how do they feel with this particular exercise that we are doing? I see that.
What you're doing, actually, there is a name for it, and it's called the would you rather technique. And this is something I'm gonna do during our marathon in summer, and we're gonna actually doing a lot of exercises or like activities with the would you rather technique. And this is a technique actually which resolves many different problems or difficulties in the classroom. Would you rather this or would you rather that? Right? And the list is very long, of course, and situations are a million of situations. And sometimes, something has to go wrong for us to kind of say, okay, I could have done this in a different way. And so, for example, in the future, you would say, hey, would you rather work in a group or would you rather, I don't know, stand and observe, whatever. But that technique I also recommend a lot. It's especially, it also shows some kind of an openness. Hey, would you rather work in a group or would you rather work alone? Would you rather stand? I don't know. Would you rather sit? And I'm smiling because our interactive classroom at Gdansk Tech, in which we do all our workshops, actually gives a lot of opportunities to use that technique, right? Because people have different necessities. And this is, of course, as I said, it's not a checklist, because you don't go with the list and say, okay, what's going to happen today? But being aware that there is something like that there is a technique like that, in next time, for sure, you would be, okay, maybe in this situation, I should give,
other possibilities.
The would you rather question. But for the text, I don't expect anyone to understand. There was just a GPT, like a heavy, dense philosophy text. I don't understand it either. But yes, when students came to my classroom to their first Spanish class, this is how Spanish looked to them. This is how chemistry, mathematics, biology looks to a person that, confronts that for the first time. So just because, as I said, we're passionate about it doesn't mean that, they will understand. And it's okay to ask, hey, would you rather this or would you rather that? Or would you like me to clarify a few things? And so I think that this is a lot of work to do. We have a lot of flowers, a lot of students, but I think that SI, not AI, works beautifully as our support. So how can we now take those tools, which are for me only tools, right? We have this framework, which is very dense, and this is a workshop that should last at least 16 hours if you really want to understand the framework. But how can I take now this and think of in terms of diversity of the classroom and use AI tools as a help? Because I know that I cannot handle everything by myself. You know, I have so many students and they're all different. And I think that if we combine this framework with AI, we can actually benefit both the student and the teacher. As teachers, maybe we can cut on the admin stuff, we can cut on the prep, because we are the experts, we know. But, you know, since now we have all these diverse learners, well, we need some support and we're by ourselves. So I think that, and we have to do so many things and admin stuff and prep. So maybe we can actually benefit from the artificial intelligence, and we can bring that, you know, diverse approach to our classroom. And I think students can also choose how to be assessed, how they can present their knowledge, how can they meet the learning outcomes. And it's not that we, you know, of course we'll have to redesign our approach, as I said, but also we can give students tools to work, and they can say, wow, I don't know, I went to this class and the teacher said that I can actually personalize my own learning. So he gave me a tool that I can use. And now instead of reading this dense philosophy text, I can use a tool that can convert this into a podcast, or I can take notes. And so I think that some examples of how AI can support students, for example, I don't know, we can have long papers summarized. We can have text read to them, for example, written to text. We can set up tutoring conversations so they can practice a difficult topic. In my case, for the American students, the most difficult topic was the verb to be and past tense. And they struggle with it in assessments. There was like a national problem. So, for example, I can build a GPT, personalized GPT that can support them, or I can say, hey, listen, this tool can help you practice these two difficult concepts. So I don't have to be with them at home, but if I give them a tool, I will say, hey, use this. This can help you. You can actually have your own tutor. Like you can talk, you know, and practice. You can, for example, if it's too much text, you can say, okay, I'm going to convert this into a video. Or if you give them a video, you can use AI to summarize the video, because some of you might work not only with books, but you maybe work with videos, right? We use different forms. And you can say, okay, this video is 2 hours long, but I just want you to understand the key points. And here's a tool that can help you. Again, if we have students for which, I don't know, in our case, Polish, for you, it might be German, or I don't know, Spanish, Italian is their second language. You can also use a tool that can help them, that can support them, right? That can help them with those difficult concepts. I remember you know, it was difficult for me with Polish, even though Polish is my second language since birth. But we had students from Asia. I had colleagues from Vietnam, from Thailand, and so on. And for them, Polish was just the way, you know, their languages would be difficult for me. And they didn't have any support, and they struggled, right? Because, you know, we have limited resources, limited support 20-something years ago. So now the student can have some additional help. You know, they can support themselves, and you can show them, use this will help you in such a way. So going back to the UDL, we have different tools, right, that can support means of engagement. So I was actually exploring this. Let me show you the character AI. Aldrich. Okay, now please, Bartek, just tell me, do you see my screen?
Yep,
do you see?
it's,
Okay.
yes, translated.
Okay, let me show you a
Elena.
tool that, where was the, okay, character AI, for example, and here I have a project. This can go both good way and depends. So I would just say that, I mean, here students can create their own characters, and they can practice a difficult, I don't know, chemistry assignment, or they can practice something related to your field of interest. And this is just something that they can create for themselves. For example, I created, I don't know, you can give them the instructions. So what do you expect? You can give them some documents. You can give them, you know, of course, you can support them. And so here, for example, I created a character. It's called Rosario Castellanos. She was a very famous and prominent Mexican writer. And she was writing, you know, short stories about women and the difficult position of women in Mexico back in the days when, you know, she was alive. And I said, okay, well, now let's say I imagine that I'm a student, I'm studying Latin American literature, and I'm struggling really with Mexican literature. And so, you know, I was tell my students, okay, you can create, you know, this character. I don't know, her name is Rosario Castellanos. They have to kind of, when you create a new one, so you're going to see here, for example, I don't know why it's not working for me now, but yesterday I was doing this. So I will say, okay, this is Rosario Castellanos. This is who she is. So she's a writer. She's writing literature for, you know, about the lives of women. And so when I entered this chat, this is something like the personalized GPTs that we have in ChatGPT, and you can do this actually in ChatGPT. You can do the same thing. You have the same options, right? And then she said, hi, I'm Rosario Castellanos, and I'm your Mexican literature professor, right? And then I said, oh, I want to learn something about, I'm the student. I want to learn something about the culture and the literature, right? So we can kind of also allow them to play. Maybe we can give them a framework. We can say, okay, so when you're gonna enter the configuration of this character, these are the things that you should tell them, because you have a place in which you can actually say, okay, what type of questions she needs to ask, how does she need to interact. So you can give this framework to a student, right? Okay, feed this, choose a character that suits you the best, because they might choose, do the same assignments with different characters. This is what you're going to provide this character with, and you can practice on. So, okay. And we also have, I don't know if you heard the voice, but I also chose the voice and actually said that it should be Spanish, but it's a Spanish male, and it's actually Castilian Spanish from Spain. So it kind of didn't work out because Mexican Spanish is different than Spanish, but you get the idea. And then I said, okay, I want to talk about Pedro Páramo. Pedro Páramo, it's a novel that was written by Juan Rulfo. And then I said, you know, I was just like texting here and saying, okay, so tell me a little bit about more this novel. So you can, you know, be creative and see how that works for your students, and kind of try to maybe, I don't know, to engage them. Another thing, and I think we've seen this a little bit more, is the notebook. The notebook LM.
Can I stop you for a few moments? I have questions regarding this character AI. Is it on the ChatGPT engine?
You go through it as a separate. So,
yeah, I saw that. I'm just asking about what kind of model is it using? Is it?
I think is the ChatGPT model, because if you go into the GPTs, it looks like a GPT.
Yeah. I just opened another leaflet for that. I just wanted to check it.
Okay. Yeah. So it works exactly like the ChatGPT personalized GPTs, and actually has the same style of configuration. So you can actually do this in the character AI, or you can do it in the ChatGPT, and I think that for the most part the results would be very, very similar.
Okay, perfect.
The thing with the ChatGPT is that it can be more personalized, so it works with that rack, the internal architecture. You can add your own files. You can create this type of ChatGPT, personalized ChatGPT for your students, and you can feed it. You can do the framework and say, okay, so now engage with this and, you know, learn something about my subject. Because even though if you don't have the paid version of ChatGPT as a student, you can engage with personalized GPT created by your teacher, and you can actually learn new things. And then we have the notebook. Maybe some of you know this tool, maybe some of you don't, maybe it's the first time, but this is also a great tool to personalize and to take that UDL approach to teaching. And here you can work with different materials. So if we would to create a new chat GPT, we can upload different sources. We can upload PDFs, text, audio. We can actually add links. We can actually add documents from Google Drive. This is good for us and this is good for students. So maybe you want to say, listen, all the materials I have are in PDFs, but I'm going to present you with a tool that will help you learn something. And then you add all these tools, you add these files here, and then you have amazing options and you can try now. So you can, let me go to one of the ones that I have. Okay, so I had this article about extraheroic AI, so how to foster higher order thinking skills. Here you can upload more papers, not just one. I added one because it was very heavy for me to kind of process all the information, because it goes into the topic of higher order thinking skills and how can we use AI to extract things from students. So not AI as a tool, but actually critical thinking. Very good paper, I recommend it. And I said, okay, well, this is too much for me to handle because it was a lot of information. So maybe I can have a study guide. Give me a study guide. And imagine that this is your student reading your heavy, dense philosophy article. And you say, okay, you have a tool, upload it, and then you can have your own study guide, right? And so I have this study guide. So it gives me some definition, it extracts the most important things from that article, right? And then maybe you can say, hey, maybe you can also create with this tool a frequently asked question list, right? So you can generate that list because, I don't know, you're going to test them. I'm just using my imagination and say, hey, I'm going to test you on the most important things from this article. So students can actually create a list of frequently asked questions from this article, because and then maybe, you know, they can bring their results to the class and maybe you can discuss, right? Because of course we also teach them, don't trust 100%, but you can do an assignment. Okay, do this at home, bring your results, and let's discuss what are your findings, right? Is it the same? Did you get different results? What do you think, right? You're there to kind of moderate and to have a control in the sense of you're the expert, right? You're gonna see, and if there are some gaps, you're gonna say, okay, this is great, this is so, and this we need to talk about it. So just I showed you an example of how AI works, and that we shouldn't trust 100%. Don't give up, don't give everything to AI. If there is a timeline, you can also create a timeline. And this is also great, a mind map. We've talked about it. For example, some learners, they don't like this heavy text. It's too much, it's overwhelming. And they will say, especially those that struggle with, you know, with ADHD and other things, they will say, this is too much for me to handle. I can't. I need a map. I need something that's organized, right? So this will create a map for you. And then, you know, you can go and you click, and then you know, you can discuss different things, right, from this mind map. So a learner that needs a mind map will find a mind map, right? And then, you know, they can go from there. So when you're looking at a mind map, you're not overwhelmed. Oh, I'm sorry, you're not that overwhelmed. And another great thing here, actually, which I don't know where, let me go back. Sources, I don't know what I did, jump to the bottom. No, this is it. Here, for example, I can say, okay, well, I have students that don't like mind maps and they don't like to listen. Well, you're gonna say, well, now you can create a podcast, right, from this text, and then maybe you can use this podcast. And
can I? Is he reading all the text which was generated? Or just the parts of it?
The bad thing here is that you cannot listen, I think, the text that it's producing. But if I click here, this is going to be a 22-minute, like a conversation between two people, which sounds very realistic. So like me and you having a conversation.
Just like
you can actually choose when I talk to teachers, they say this is terrible. And I said, I know it's overwhelming. I understand. But if you listen to this here, it's going to be like a podcast, like you're listening to a podcast on Spotify. Then they can change the speed. They can download this, and actually they can
for
it
many
can be
people that might
interactive
be
and
convenient.
yes, so you can, I mean, you can of course choose. I don't want to, of course, overwhelm anyone, but you can offer. So what you've done here, you've used the same article, which is your primary source. You've given this article to the students, but you also said, okay, I understand that some of you don't like to read, or they will maybe like to learn in a different way. So you can learn in so many different ways. And I think that's, you're not going to do the work for them, but you're going to help them. And then you can come back. Okay, what did you use? The podcast. How did that work? What did you get out of it? Okay, and you, what did you do? I actually used the mind map. Okay, how did that work? And you can actually have a very fruitful discussion, I would say, with the students. And then, of course, you can bring that AI ethics. You can talk about higher order thinking skills. You can actually show them that you're open, that you know about AI, and that you know how things work. This is 11 labs, also text to speech, speech to text, conversational AI. Of course, I always tell teachers, because I know it's overwhelming and we have so many tools and this is too much going on, that test, see, and then reject. Say, no, this is not for me. I just want to use ChatGPT, right? ChatGPT. So in ChatGPT, we have very similar options. For example, when we talk about representations, this is a great option if you like, because I don't like to work with visual a lot. That's not my skill. That's not my strength. I will sometimes use different type of tools in the free version because I need a picture or two, but some people like to work with visuals. And of course, if someone also, you can say, hey, if you need to look, if you need a visual, I have a solution for you. You have this tool, you can use it, right? You can also help them. And I also wanted to I wanted to say hi to my students. If I were to say hi, let's say, and this is also just testing how to say hi to my students, and not just with a text, but maybe with a picture. Of course, we start from here and we go far, far away with these tools. And I said, okay, well, you read, it also works text to picture, so you can have a prompt. And then you can say, okay, well, now I'd like a visual representation. Because I know that some students would appreciate if I have a picture, but I don't want to put my picture. Maybe I can put an avatar and I can put something else, right? And it gave me two options. And then it said, and then I said, okay, picture, great, but I would also like to have a movie. Why not? Right? Because maybe some students will like a movie. And this is just wishful thinking, right? Like, I'm not saying that you have to do everything and at the same time, but just know that if you need it, it's there for you. And then when I wanted to convert this into a video, and I said, okay, well, now I want to do a video, not just like a infographic or a picture image. And I did that, and it made me actually, first, I'm going to go back to the picture. It asked me, would you like to be this or that? And I said, okay, I choose this one. And then it proceeded to preparing like a short video, and then you can cut, remix, blend, edit. You can edit the prompt. I mean, this is kind of, I'm teaching this workshop course, and the teacher was saying, wow, this is overwhelming, right? This is too much going on. And I said, it's good to know, and you're going to choose, maybe this is not going to work for you, right? This is in ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is also adding different things. And that's why I say I know a lot of tools, but most of the times I work only with ChatGPT. If we have students in our classroom that, I don't know, struggle with space. This is also another tool that is very interesting. And actually this tool can convert PDF to video, right? So you can upload a PDF document and it can convert the PDF to a video. So you're also giving options. You're saying, okay, I have the PDF. You can go to Notebook and prepare a podcast based on that, or you can come here and you can have a video. So all this, like you can say, okay, you can upload. I don't know if I have something, right? I have this competencies, for example, for teachers, UNESCO competencies for teachers. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer to upload, and then you can tell the student, okay, I have this PDF. I understand that maybe it's going to be too much for you to read because it has, I don't know, like 54 pages or so, but maybe you can use this interactive tool and it can help you read through the paper. So, for example, paper summary, right? And there is another tool that also, we're going to wait here, but another tool is Chat PDF, interactive. So if you would work with articles, you can also add them here. I have the same paper here. I already started to do some work because I was teaching in a different workshop. And what we did here was that, you know, it kind of summarized, right, the paper, and I can go from here. I can say I like it, I dislike it. It already gives me some kind of a idea. What would you like me to prepare? A diagram or a mind mapping tool, right? So I can chat. Actually, I can have a conversation as a student, and I think as a teacher as well, because we also have to do a lot of research. And I can say, okay, well, summarize. Now focus on application in education because this is what is important for me. This is what I want to know. And I can talk about back and forward. I can ask questions. You can do similar thing with ChatGPT. That's what I'm saying, that you can either use ChatGPT for many things, or if you specialize in certain topics and you need a certain tool, then we have tools for everything. To chat with PDFs, chat with PowerPoint presentations, and so on. And here the same, right? PDF, and now I can go from here, right? I can say, okay, well now talk about, I don't know, I want to know more about AI and see what happens, right? And so this is also a great tool, especially if you have heavy materials that they need to read, or maybe they can, I don't know, you want to give them something to read, a book you have in the PDF or document or whatever, and they can study for the exam. So Bartek, I see you. Yes.
Yeah,
Go
just
ahead.
I wanted to ask, what about the hallucinations? I mean,
A what?
because some of those models are hallucinating. They are they are making those conclusions from the text, and there are some conclusions which might not exist. What about this problem? Because it might be problematic if the students are learning something, and if they learn something by heart from those imperfect materials, that might be an issue.
Right. So I think that that's a very valid question, and I think that this is something that's going to come out. That's why I say that we should use this in the classroom and give them this assignment, and then they can come back and we can discuss. You can do a case study. I don't know if you're teaching law, right? I don't know. Maybe you can have a case and be like, okay, work with ChatGPT and then discuss. What do you have? What do you see? Okay, so what are the conclusions? That we don't give up on our critical thinking. We don't just handle everything to artificial intelligence. We have to teach students, because if we don't talk about it, yes, they're going to use it, but not knowing how to use it. If we do this type of exercise with them, we can discuss, we can see, and we can say, this is a tool. This can help you, I don't know, draft. Maybe this can help you prepare a bullet list. Maybe this can prepare key terms, maybe questions, but be aware. Look how it looks. So you don't want me to read this in your paper, right? And I think that if we bring this to the table with this openness, we're also going to see great results. And this latest research actually shows there was this article, I'm sorry, in Wall Street Journal, a great article from last week, and it was talking about this atmosphere of doubt, of students don't trust their students don't trust teachers, and teachers don't trust students. And now with these detectors that some people still use to prove that someone, I mean, like, we know that they're using it, but we don't have any tools in place, and some people still use those tools, those detectors. And students now, what they're doing is that they said, I cannot be creative because I use the same tools as my teacher, and when I upload my work, it says that it's not human. And then I have to change, and I actually have to start writing worse than I do, because I have to prove that, you know, this is human work. So that's why I say we need a conversation, we need to talk about it. If we want more results that are kind of, we can maybe trust them more. Of course, I always recommend the paid version, and I am aware that not everyone can afford, but when we build this personalized GPTs for our students, right, in the GPT model, I think that here we have more agency, because when we are working on this works on rack, so means that this architecture, like using resources, when we create this personalized GPT, we feed the GPT with materials that we've checked, that are legit, that are valid. So for example, if this was an assignment and I give this to my students, the first thing this GPT is going to do, they're going to use my sources that I've checked, that are valid, and then later it can go to outsourcing or other materials. So if we say, okay, no, completely, it's not good. So that's why I say bring it to the classroom, give them a chance and talk about it. Just change the way you do assignments, right? Instead of do this, now say, okay, do it at home, and then come back and we'll talk about it. What do you have? Just like modeling and showing them, and talk about this hallucination and all this problem, because it's here.
Yeah, and I just noticed one more thing, that some of your materials are in English while the title was in Polish, and it's strictly connected with the question which was previously given here. So when we are using, for example, Notebook LM, did you notice if there is a big difference between results written in Polish and written in English?
I mean, this is what we talk about in Poland, because I don't know how it is in the different, I don't know where everyone is from. Maybe they can say, but here we talk a lot about our local large language models. For me, because most of my life I've worked in the United States. When I started using ChatGPT, I was like, it sounds Polish, but it's kind of English. And why? Because, you know, most of the materials we have inside of ChatGPT, I mean, it's the big high-tech companies from the United States, and the materials that they're trained on are English, right? So it's going to give better results. And there is something else that we talk about, the cost of using ChatGPT that's not in your language, right? So if I'm a Polish speaker and I use ChatGPT, the cost, it will cost me more than a person that's an English speaker. Why? Because Polish, it's very complex language, and it's going to take more tokens. That's the cost, right? Because we don't talk about, in ChatGPT, we talk about tokens, not words. So Finnish, Hungarian, Polish, and other languages, they will pay, we're going to pay, our price is going to be higher, but not that someone is going to take money out of your account, but just because you're going to use your tokens faster. And then what's going to happen is that the chat is going to start forgetting, right? Versus English speakers that will have advantage, because those models were, right, are basing on English language. And this is another topic. But what we do in Poland now, we're trying to promote our local language models, like Bielik, for example, and others. And we say, okay, this is going to work better for Polish speakers because it's in our native language. So it's not going to cost us that much, right, in tokens. So if I start a conversation, it's not going to discriminate me because English is not my first language and because I need to work with it in Polish. So I would say that here we also have some problems, and I think that they're kind of working, this is an ethical issue, how not to discriminate speakers of different languages in terms of using, but you know, I think they're thinking about it. When it's going to happen, I don't know. But for sure, we're in a disadvantage as Polish speakers. If you speak Finnish or Hungarian or other language that's complex, you are in a disadvantage. That what we know today. Maybe tomorrow is going to change. What we've talked about today, tomorrow might be old news. So we all know.
That's a bit funny for me because I had that knowledge, but I didn't realize that way. I mean, that knowledge just crystallized inside my head. I knew how the tokens were working, but I was like, now, today, when I heard you, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. She's right. I'm paying more just because I'm using Polish, because Polish is much more complex. The sentences are much longer, and he's trying to translate that from Polish to English and then from English to Polish again. You're right.
And you can go actually to GPT token, and you can copy paste the same text. And you can copy paste the same text within the ChatGPT token.
Yeah, to decrease the costs.
Tokenizer. And you're gonna see that the same text, in the exact same text in Polish. I was actually doing this exercise with teachers. For example, for the same text, a Polish user is gonna pay 1,000 tokens, and an English speaker is gonna pay 200. And that's a very big disparity.
That's a lot.
Yes, and the same with Hungarian, the same with Finnish. Like, we're not talking about few tokens. We're talking about few hundred tokens. So what are the strategies? They say, okay, well, maybe you can use the tokenizer, and then you can, clean up your prompts, and but who has time for it? First of all, like sometimes we don't have the time. That's another type of work we have to do, which is time consuming. And difficult because also you're not only paying tokens when you put your prompt in, but also when you get your answer. So if I've lost 700 tokens with my prompt, and I'm going to lose 1,500 token with my answer because Polish is more complex, then I'm in a big disadvantage. I'm like 2,000 tokens behind my and actually there is a lot of papers now that they talk about what do we do, how can we create equity in terms of tokens, even though like we don't feel because we don't pay, we pay the $20 and we think that's all, but no, we're kind of penalized.
A funny thing here, there is someone who is okay with that. Probably those ChatGPT and other companies are learning more and more because we are using such languages. I mean, all those owners of those LLM models, they realize they are losing a lot of money, losing a lot of energy because we are trying to be polite for the chats. I am doing that. Probably most people are like, hey, chat, how are you? Would you like to do something and something? And this would you like is, of course, consuming some energy. But nevertheless, that's how those ChatGPTs and others are trying to learn more and more. They are learning how to communicate with us in a polite way. So this is a good thing, as a matter of fact. And from some perspectives.
It's a good thing, but the people that are cleaning up all the mess and all the information and all the data usually live in, we used to call them the third world countries, so low income countries. And they usually are paid very low money for cleaning up that information and teaching the ChatGPT to be polite to us. And they're sometimes exposed to very drastic information because everyone puts just everything inside, and to clean data also is not easy. And this is also like an ethical question because we talk a lot about ethics. Like, okay, he's polite to us, but what is the price? And this is something, as I said, this is the price we don't see as everyday users. And sometimes we don't think about it, right? But this is the hidden, I would say, price for using ChatGPT. And also in terms of these tools, I wanted to say and encourage that, and this is, I think, a conversation we're going to have, because that's why I don't use a lot of these tools to, for example, for images. I have these templates, PowerPoint templates I use with graphics, but I don't use it for too many pictures, because one picture for me, and so my slide can look cute, but that's a big damage for the environment, because we also don't talk about it. These big machines, they consume a lot of energy. They impact, right, the environment. So we have to be aware what we want to do, how we want to use it, what is the purpose. And I think we need more training on that, because this is something, the hidden cost. We don't talk about it yet, right? So I send you a link here for the tokenizer. If you are not a Polish speaker, or you are a speaker of different languages, you can try it and you can see how much the same information will cost you in different languages. And thank you so much for the invitation. I hope
thank
it
you.
was.
Do you have space for a few questions or comments?
Yes.
Okay. So the funny thing, you mentioned that about the average brain, and I was immediately thinking about the samples, because I'm a chemist. And while I'm doing some research regarding samples, I don't know, I'm trying to determine mercury, cadmium, lead, or copper inside any kind of a sample. And then afterwards, I'm trying to check what is the average concentration of those species. And that's the same. And in most cases, I cannot find a sample which is average. So probably the world is like that. And the thing I wanted to say at the end is the fact this is very difficult for us to reach to every single person. And we as a teachers, probably we will never be a world champions in what we are doing, because we are teaching. And there is always someone who would be disappointed, will be like, Mac, this is not for me. And I like the other guy or the other girl who's teaching. And this is also something that we should realize. We will not be a world champions in what we are doing, but I think it's still worth trying.
I mean, I have to say, I have to share that I've had few difficult cases in my career that I wasn't able to resolve with, even though I reached out to different resources. And this was especially difficult because, it was the time of the pandemic and I was teaching online I was in Poland, but I was still teaching. I was, employed in the United States. And I had a student that at some point became very, how to say, unpolite to me. Of course, everything via text, and these messages were long, and I was awful, terrible, disaster. And I was just, it kind of shocked me, right? Because, I thought, what had happened? Of course, in a way, you're trying not to personalize things, but at the same time, you're thinking, okay, but what happened? Like, I didn't even know, because, when you're with the students in the classroom, like you see their faces, their smiles, their sadness, you can feel on many things. And I was like, at some point I said, please, don't, this is not a proper college communication. I don't know if you have difficulties, maybe we can schedule, because we had there in school, we had something that's called judicial affairs. So it's kind of like a court for students, but I mean, just sounds terrible, but it's actually always trying to kind of talk, and you have that independent judge in between. I mean, this is not a judge. This is all very, very, very nice, and it just sounds terrible. And I was like, okay, maybe we should meet, schedule a conversation, and see, I don't know what I've done wrong and how can we fix it. At the end, the students kind of said to me that they were on the spectrum and they had, other difficulties and so on. And I said that, okay, now I have a clear information about who you are, right, as a person. And, please tell me, how can I support you? Because sometimes we're not going to have the answer, even though we know the UDL and we know all these things. But I said, instead of, me now being, okay, the student, this and that, I said, no, okay, thank you for sharing. How can I help you? Tell me. tell me, what would you like? What would work the best for you? And I think that was a very difficult case, many sleepless nights, because, I was like, okay, what was going on? What did I do? But we found a way to work things out. And sometimes, I had students that were doing certain things in class. I had a student that was coming to class and he smelled like weed all the time. And, he wasn't coming with the weed, with the marijuana on campus, but he was smelling like marijuana. And I have him and I have 25 other people. And how am I supposed to resolve the situation, right? Am I supposed to just take him and to tell him leave my classroom or what, right? That's the easiest way to do. And I had difficulties with him throughout. And I called him into my office. I said, hey, how can we resolve this? Because obviously there's something going on. I see it, you know it. How can I help you? Tell me. And he told me his story. And he was born in North Las Vegas in a difficult neighborhood, going through preschool, school, high school, through difficult times. Everyone would reject him. He was like, oh, that outcast that no one wanted to work with. And now he's in my classroom. He's already damaged by the educational system. And I said, I understand, I have empathy, but please tell me, what can I do? We need to finish this class. Can we, I don't know, draw kind of like a contract that would work for both? Of course, this is not like a contract, that you sign. Do you want us to involve someone else? Like and of course, and I'm not saying this, at the end, you might have a case that you won't be able to support, but at least what I always told to myself, I had different cases of students that were not, for example, sexually harassed. And even worse cases, students that were there on illegal aliens. I mean, everything that you can imagine. And I said, I cannot help you, but I will find a way. I will find a resource. And I think that's what they appreciate. And sometimes you have to say, well, I'm not an immigration office, right? I want to help, but I'm not able to. So I will do everything I can, but then it's very painful. But then I had to let it go at some point because I wasn't able to do more. And I think that we should have that empathy for ourselves as well. But I know that I've done everything. And the student still writes to me. She's still in the US. And she says, hey, professora, just update. This is where I'm at. And students writing to me after all these years, that's what makes me happy, that I know that I've done everything I can, but that doesn't mean I will resolve every problem. So just empathy and open heart and conversation.
I just heard that you are using three very powerful things here: empathy, sympathy, and the contract. So that's probably how we should do it. And just to slowly finishing our today's webinar, because we are 15 minutes past the time. Sorry for for talking with you so long. I was just interested with your answers, and I think we might try finish it with words that the UDL is just teaching for everyone. Is that so?
I would say, as I said, I think it's a philosophy, and it's something that you feel in your heart, because you have the framework, but it also takes a heart and empathy, as you said, and openness. And I think that when we combine those two things, even if because maybe there will be situations that are not written in the UDL, but you will just feel it. And I think your students will appreciate as well. So I think it's just a philosophy of teaching for everyone, as you said. Yes.
For everyone. Thank you. That's probably the best conclusions of today's meeting. Thank you very much. And thank you all. And see you on the next Didactic Friday, which will be held on, oh my God.
Next year.
the next academic year, the October probably. So thank you and so I invite you to next Dydaktyczny Piątek, which will be held in Polish next week.
Thank you.
So
thank you.
See you soon.
Take care.
See you. Take care and bye.
Bye.